Just imagine a world without oil. Maybe we're still riding horses instead of driving. Use fish oil lamps instead of electric ones. And war is all about swords. And the guns. Loaded by hand. Oil has been around since it was discovered in the 19th century. It's not just a source of fuel. It's also changed the face of the world economically, politics and geography. But the problem is, the gifts from the earth are not endless. And the question ever oil. How many countries have lost sleep and food? So it's really in our world. You will never be rich. Back in time to 1859. Acro Black drilled the first oil well in the US. Oil was originally used to replace fish oil, elephants and lighting. But when the first cars came along, in the early 20th century, petroleum immediately became the lifeblood of the industry. Then the First and Second World Wars broke out. Oil proves its strategic role. Whoever has a lot of oil wins. Hitler in the Second World War. He tried to control oil in the Middle East and the Kapka area. It was a Soviet hotspot at the time. Unfortunately, the Soviets did protection of oil fields in Baku and allies to take full advantage of oil from the United States and the Middle East. A clearer example: aircraft tank. Warships all need oil to operate. Without military, oil is like a colony of stray ants. Oil is not scattered everywhere. It's concentrated in some oil-rich areas. The Middle East is the oil heart of the world. Up to 48% of global data. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq and Kuwait are the big players in this field. Every time they sneeze a little bit, the world's oil prices will immediately dance. Further north, Russia is also a bearded power. Oil fields in Siberia and the Caspian Sea are not only big, it's also extremely difficult to mine because of the extreme weather. In the Americas, Venezuela. It has the largest amount of oil in the world. Of poor governance and political crisis has caused this country to fall into the severe economic crisis. And in an oil-rich country, people still lack fuel. In Southeast Asia, oil is found in Brunei, Indonesia and Malaysia. Vietnam is no exception, with large oil fields in Bok Ho and 9 long parachute reserves. It can't be compared to countries in the Middle East. The question is, when will oil run out? It's a very difficult question to answer. There's about 1.6 trillion barrels of oil in the world today. It has been proven. It means found. And it can be exploited with today's technology. And if the technology goes even further to find oil, or it could be exploited somewhere deeper, maybe the number will be more. If we keep consumption at 100 million barrels a day, we've got about 40 to 55 before we run out. But exhausted here doesn't mean that oil is completely gone. Its mining costs are too high. It's no longer economically viable. However, when the oil runs out depends on many factors. The first is mining technology. New mining technologies, like shale oil in the United States, has increased the available reserves. For example, the United States was heavily dependent on imported oil. But now, to become an oil exporter thanks to shale oil, it is true that in the difficult, people always show the wisdom. The second is demand. That is, if the world turns to energy, renewable as solar power, wind power or electric car, oil demand will also drop significantly. And the third one is political and economic. Oil prices also greatly affect the speed of extraction. If oil prices are high, difficult to exploit oil fields such as the oil sands in Canada, it will also become more attractive. In a common picture, many countries get rich from oil. But not AI also uses this resource in a wise way. Venezuela is a bitter lesson. With large oil reserves and global top grade, Venezuela used to be rich. But when oil prices fall, the economy that depends entirely on oil has collapsed. That leaves people in need of food and medicine. In contrast, in Europe, Norway is an ideal model. They're using oil profits to set up a sovereign wealth fund. It's now worth more than $1.4 trillion, securing the future for the next generation. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, it's not just based on oil, but also invest heavily in travel, technology and renewable energy. Part of the United Arab Emirates, it's now famous for its more spectacular buildings, compared to what people imagine of them, related to oil. So we've got the answer to that. When oil will run out. With today's mining technology, that's about half a century from now. But is running out of oil scary or not? And what is the world preparing for? Running out of oil sounds scary. But in fact, The world has begun to prepare for the future. There is no oil. Electric cars are becoming more and more popular. China, one of the world's largest electric vehicle markets. By 2023, more than 6 million electric cars will be sold. New technologies such as green hydrogen. It is also being developed to replace oil. In heavy industry. In Iceland, a country with no oil. They have proven that living without oil is possible. With the amount of land, heat, and Iceland's hydropower doesn't just provide itself with enough electricity, but also exported to European countries. So the world is now. There are examples of this. No more absolute dependence. And oil that's looking for new sources of energy to replace, but the story is not simple. It's just changing from oil to battery or wind. Every replacement candidate has their own story. The sun is the first thing people think about. It's an endless source of energy. And of course it's completely free. It's emerging as a viable candidate to replace oil. Did you know in an hour? The Earth gets enough energy from the sun to serve all of humanity's electricity needs. Within a whole year, solar panels are no stranger now. From the roofs of big cities to the giant energy fields. For example, the No Solar plan in Morocco. More than 3,000 football fields. But the sun also has bad days. When it rains. Or where to get solar power at night. That's why energy storage technology is being developed by countries. As Germany and China invest heavily. Understand simple. Lots of light during the day. It can be stored and used throughout the day. At night the future. Maybe it's not just the battery. Bring solar power on the roof. It's also a storage system. It's enough to power a large system. The wind is also completely free. If you've heard through the wings. In our country or in Europe. You'll see the wind topping like giant propellers. It's not just beautiful, it's clean electricity. And it's a completely free bank. But not everywhere is blessed by nature. Like the middle of our country. Or the wind fields. In many other places. Areas with little wind. Large bin takes up too much space. Wind power is still limited. Then there's the hydrogen battery. When people think of hydrogen, they think of a gas. It's easy to burn. But when controlled, it can be a very powerful source of energy. Hydrogen fuel cell. It works by combining hydrogen and oxygen. Japan is a country without oil. Are at the forefront of this technology. Oil can run out. And one thing that's still there is nuclear power. A nuclear plant can provide continuous power for many years. With high efficiency and no gas emission CO2 method. One of the leading countries in this field. It's dependent on 70% of its energy from nuclear. But incidents like Chinapool 1986 or Fukushima 2.011. It's the big shadows that haunt this industry. Radioactive waste takes thousands of years to decompose and the risk of leakage is always present. However, with increasingly improved safety technology, nuclear is still an option to consider in the global energy picture. In conclusion, imagine a world. There's no roar of the gasoline engine. Only the electric cars glide smoothly. There are a number of countries that are leading this trend. Norway, like China, are catching up to support electric vehicles. Increasingly advanced battery technologies. For example, pin lithium. Not just energy-efficient storage. It's getting smaller and smaller. Countries like China and the United States are investing in recycled batteries to reduce waste from manufacturing. Oil will run out. But the world is preparing for that. From the sunlight, fields of wind to hydrogen, and nuclear power. Humanity, ready to enter a new energy era? This story isn't just about technology. It's a change in the way we live. One day not far away, oil will run out. But people still have to live. The earth still has to turn. And you know what? The world we leave our children will be clean. Green is much cooler. Thanks for your interest. Follow this story. If you find it interesting, please leave me a like and a YouTube subscription. This is Explore the World channel. Thanks everyone so much.